They can't characterize how far, how wide, how deep, how fast this plume is moving, or make models for this plume when they don't have that information in that 4,000-foot area. And Interra brought that to their attention. They said the model is way too coarse because they don't have an appropriate number of monitoring wells. The EPA model said that they lack the figures for hydraulic conductivity values, and other folks that have looked at this say those hydraulic conductivity values were set way too low. So everything has been biased in the modeling in an attempt to fool the public into thinking that this is going to be 30 years before it arrives. Well, what about the trace amounts that may arrive long before the maximum contaminant limit levels arise? And I see I have 5 seconds, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Anita Anstitz, and I have a question. The thing that I'm really concerned about is the soil vaporization that you're doing with heavy blocks, volatile organic chemicals, because how much is going to be poured into the air? We're talking a lot about the chemicals in the ground, but there's going to be a tonnage, how many billions of pounds of organic chemicals going into the air that we breathe when we already have problems with asthma, cancer clusters, lots of wind. So is it meeting EPA standards?
Thank you very much for your question. It's a great question. Air emissions is a concern, and so with our system that we have in place, we have a different regulator for air. It's the Albuquerque Environmental Health Department. Ms. Mary Lou Leonard, who's sitting up here at the table, represents that organization, and they do monitor our system to make sure that we are within the defined parameters. And keep in mind, it's not just for this system. Our entire Air Force Base is an entity. And so we have to maintain all emissions from the entire installation at or below certain levels. And we are doing that at this point.
Hi, my name is Dr. Marcia Ogilvie, and I'm an anthropologist. Now, I was thinking it's very interesting to me that prehistoric populations in the Southwest were able to manage their water supplies for thousands of years. And it looks like we may be able to decimate ours in about 60. Thank you.
I'm Sally Alice Thompson, and I was wondering what happens to the contaminated soil that's excavated?
That's a good question, thank you. We take that to an approved site that handles contaminated materials. We will ship that off-site to a dedicated landfill that accepts contaminated materials and will replace the soil with clean soil.
Where is that?
I don't know the location of it. I don't know if I can get help from somebody as to the location of that. I tell you what, I'll make sure that I get an answer to you though and know exactly where that is.
I'm Janet Greenwald. I'm a co-coordinator of Citizens for Alternatives to Radioactive Dumping. And first of all, I'd like to reiterate what the man along the wall said, is there's many people that are standing here and all the way around. Couldn't they at least have some chairs? And the next time this meeting is held, couldn't it be held somewhere where everyone could sit down? So that's my first question. My second comment is that many of the standards that we have for air and water were promulgated long ago in the 1970s. And they did not consider the risk to the fetus, which these risks are much higher than the risk to, what is it?
Why don't we trade microphones? Mine doesn't limit, so maybe it's the microphone.
And so when we talk about acceptable contaminant levels, we are not talking about the levels that protect the unborn. Last fall, the Department of Health came out with a press release that said that New Mexico and Bernalillo counties birth death rates are accelerating, while all around us, in all the states around us, the birth death rates and birth defects are going down. The number is going down. So I agree with Dave McCoy that we need to get some monitoring wells close into the source wells. Our babies are already in trouble. Let's not acerbate this situation. We thought that we were going to have a deformed grandchild, and thank God we didn't, because of contamination from Los Alamos. But during that process, we found out that many deformed babies are born at Espanola Hospital. If they think you're going to have a deformed baby, you have to look at a book full of deformed babies and tell them whether you want to hold your deformed baby before they take it away to wherever they take these deformed babies. So I'm telling you, it's a growing problem here, and we need to stand up for wells close to our source wells, monitoring wells that will take in the information about how much contamination is getting to those wells, even if it's below what is considered the acceptable contaminant levels. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Just to address a couple things there real quickly. I unfortunately wasn't at the last CAB meeting, so I can't speak to that one. This is the first one I've been to where we've had this large crowd, and we obviously will look at other venues in order to make sure that we're able to accommodate all the folks that want to come, so we can seat you comfortably here. As far as maximum contaminant levels, I'm not sure if everyone understands that process. MCLs are set. They're set by the federal government. That process is set up so that if you were drinking water that was at the maximum contaminant level, and you drank a lot of it, I don't remember how much it is per day, a gallon or 2 gallons of water per day, for 70 years, 1 person in 10 million would have realized a health effect. So that's where the maximum contaminant levels are. I'm not saying that from a don't worry about it standpoint. I'm saying that so that you understand when they set those maximum contaminant levels, they're being very conservative with regard to those levels in order to make sure that we are being safe. I can't speak to the levels for the unborn. That's a very good point that you raised. Thank you for doing so.
My name is Flora Barron, and I'm also a member of the Citizens for Alternatives to Radioactive Dumping. I am interested in knowing what assurance there is going to be, because there was a statement made about the air and pollution that will happen when some of this is recovered. And I want to know how the emissions from the air pollutants is going to be recovered. So there should be a recovery system set in place, because there will be some air pollution, and we don't need that in addition to the water pollution.
Thank you, ma'am. I was just telling you there's one more question here. I didn't hear a question.
The question was, why is there no plan for emission recovery system?
And there is, and as I mentioned before, we work with the Albuquerque Environmental Health Department in order to make sure that the emissions are within acceptable standards. We have an emissions system on this machine, which is very similar to what you have on your automobile. So you have an emissions and emission standards that need to be met, and we are monitored, and we do regular testing of we call it a stack. That's the stack that comes out, that the exhaust comes out, and we have systems in place to make sure that that exhaust is within acceptable standards for the city of Albuquerque.
So will there be a place where we can find that information?
Nate.
The question, sir, is there a place where they can find that information on the emissions testing?
Mary Lou, can you help me with that?
I'm not the air quality expert, but the folks that write the air quality permit for the Air Force Base work with me, and we will bring a copy of the permit information to the next meeting, or if you would like me to contact you directly, if you could give me your information, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Hi, my name is Paula Metzner, and I'm wondering from one of the slides that you had, where you were toggling back and forth, I thought that was a vapor slides, and you were showing how the vapor was decreasing with time. Is there any effort to track some of the people who live and work in this area for cancer rates? Because it seems to me that we're going to kind of be the canaries in the mine here.
I'm not aware that we're tracking anyone for cancer rates. Keep in mind that above those, that Beto Zone area, there are no homes in that area. So above that area is on-base property, and then there's a park across the street. That's where the Beto Zone, all of those contours are in that area. There are no homes that reside above it, which is the chief concern. And those are the levels, the standards that I showed that come from the state. Those are standards that are set in place for a residence that would be located above a situation like that.
But there are people who work there.
I don't know that there's anyone that actually works right above where the Beto Zone, the vapor plume is at this point.
Never?
Yeah, well, there are people that transit that area. I don't believe that there's I'm not aware of a work center that's above that, but we'll look into it. I'll take a note on that, and we'll look and see what facilities are above that, and whether or not we're tracking them for cancer rates or anything like that. I do know that what we have done is we've gone into a variety of facilities that are in that general area, and we have sampled the air inside the facilities, and we have not found any issues associated with the air in the facilities where we've gone and sampled.
Remember to state your name, sir.
My name is Bob, and I'm just wondering when the EDB reaches the Ridgecrest well, I think you pledged earlier in the presentation that the Air Force is committed to protecting the water supply of Albuquerque. So when they have to shut that well down, is the Air Force going to supplement the water supply to make up for the lost water to the city?
Sir, I'm not going to speculate on what would happen at that point in time, but I will tell you that the Air Force plan is that the EDB will never get to the city's production wells, that we are going to do, with this remediation effort, we're going to ensure that the EDB does not reach that. But we are pledged to maintain the safe drinking water for the people of Albuquerque, and we are working with the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority with regard to a contingency plan, should that ever happen, a variety of options, and it has to be agreed to by the Water Utility Authority as to what those various options are. And that process is still ongoing. That contingency plan has not yet been published. But when it does, it'll be made public, and you will know what, if that happens, what the plan or what the contingency plans are. There'll probably be 2 or 3 or 4 options that are listed in there. Perhaps there'll only be one. But the Air Force is committed to maintaining the safe drinking water for the people of Albuquerque.
And just a comment, it's really hard to be concerned about Al-Qaeda when our own Defense Department is trying to kill us.
Hi, I'm Jim McKay with Citizen Action as well. I've been at this full time about 2.5 years, just in the Curtis bill. There's not much you can do in 3 minutes when there's so many things that are, with all due respect, incorrectly said. We've asked a long time to have full day meetings or half day meetings where we have enough time to respond to some of the things that are said. I can speak up about several things now. Colonel Lanning, God bless him, will make a nice little comment that will make many of you feel comfortable, that aren't familiar with this, and there's no opportunity to explain why what was said in the front of the room is incorrect. 3 minutes is not enough. A few things real quick. Hi, Carl. Haven't seen you in a while.
Hi, Jim.
I missed you. You said your exact words. You are actively remediating the fuel plume today. I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any fuel plume remediation. You have SBE. Please tell us specifically what fuel plume remediation.
That's a fair point. What I meant was that we are, the whole fuel spill, to include the Beto zone, working on the Beto zone in any area where the El Napple itself is not submerged can have an effect on that. And so, but your point is correct that we do not have anything that is currently actively in the water, in the groundwater.
Okay, so
I'll give you that.
just without making a big point out of this in particular, the point I'm trying to make, the Colonel's exact words, and he said it twice, actively remediating the full fuel plume. Plume means in the water. The fuel in the ground is not called a plume. They aren't actively remediating it, so that's not going on. Colonel Lanning referred to something before the meeting began and pointed to me. Another case in point. The Air Force, I've had 2 communications with Colonel Lanning not after it arrived and with the environmental engineer at Kirtland this year, getting them to correct when they acknowledge finding jet fuel on the water table. They say in the aquifer, they say 2007. I had Colonel Lanning, to his credit, put some effort into this when we talked about this by email a year and a half ago, but it was never settled. The person I've had the communication with this time hasn't. I'd like to read you from the Air Force's own documents. They say 2007. This is from the Air Force's own documents. Anybody wants to know can contact me on our website. 2001. Detection of EDB occurred in monitor well KAFB 1061 that was installed and sampled, initiated in November 2000. Although the March 1 LTM semi-annual sampling event report was not been finalized, the analytical data have been validated as confirmed. 10 more seconds. I'm just reading the statement, why we haven't had a response to these things, and how from their own statements they can conclude they didn't discover it for 6 years later. People might want to think about the effectiveness that if it's taken them 6 years to figure these things out. I'm over time, so I'll just read. There's 3 documents that said the same thing going through 2002. I'll just pick the 2 most critical ones. Low quote. Low levels of VOCs have been detected in the groundwater SD-106, the south well, blah, blah, blah. The concentrations of benzene, toluene were below EPA levels. However, concentrations of EDB, exceeded both EPA MCL and enemy groundwater standards. That could only come from aviation gas, which they pumped. And you go later into these documents, it was 5 times over the federal level. They can't seem to put together, they discovered this in 2001.
Make sure these, and we have a question.
Yes, Nancy Burse with the Mesa District 6 Coalition of Neighborhoods. And I want to tag on what Jim said because I'm finding a discrepancy also in slide 22, page 11. And you stumbled upon it also, Colonel, where you're talking about monitoring wells were installed between October of 2000 and October 2013. But you said 2008. So I was wondering which was it?
Right. 117 monitoring wells were installed between October of 2000 and October of 2013. 83 of those were installed since 2008. Thank you for your question.
Back here. I'll come back there in just a minute.
Hi, my name is Jean Paulson. I'm one of the teachers here in town. I think it's worth noting, definitely worth noting that, we have workers that live who've been contaminated with radioactivity. We have jet fuel on our water now. We have a militarized society here in Albuquerque in which civilians are being killed by the police. These things are the legacy of bases like Kirtland and the military-industrial complex. We have been told that military jobs help our economy, but instead, after so much military and war industry here, New Mexico is consistently at the bottom of lists regarding the welfare of children. And for my part, I would just like to say it's time to go. It's time to leave. I think the base needs to close and go.
Just for my part, with regard to that, all of us in the military have taken an oath to lay down our lives, if need be, to support and defend the Constitution of this great country. And what we're doing here is a reflection of this great country. It's why I serve, because Jim will say this is me just saying something nice to make you all feel better, but I mean it from my heart, is that this is important. This is what makes our country great. You all come in here and hammer away at me. You should hold me accountable. I am standing up here with United States Air Force on my uniform. I represent the United States government in what I'm doing, and we expect our citizens to hold us accountable. So it's important that we do this. It's important that you hold us accountable and that you raise these issues. And while the inputs, we talked about a public comment period, these comments matter. These comments we take, we investigate, we search. Jim, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation tonight that you were right, that there was fuel on the water table. There was fuel contaminants on the water table back in 2001. There was no free product discovered floating on the water table until 2007. But you were correct that there were contaminants that were found in the water as early as 2001. So I think it's important that we do this, but please don't ever forget the fact that those of us serving in the military have pledged to lay down our lives if necessary to support and defend the Constitution of our great country.
Hi, my name is Susan Skirman. Very briefly, if Kirtland is serious about community outreach, about informing the community as to what the problem is, why doesn't this handout tell us how many gallons of jet fuel spilled? 24 million is on the community group handout, but not on yours. Why is such critical information missing? And number two, when will the cleanup be completed? What year? Thank you.
Great question, thank you. Yeah, we didn't put the fuel amount in the handouts. That's a valid point. We haven't mentioned it previously because we were waiting for the RFI to be submitted. But the estimate of the amount of fuel spilled is about 6 million gallons. That's what's in the RFI report. That's what we've submitted to the New Mexico Environment Department. The year that it will be cleaned up, I cannot tell you. I do not know, but the Air Force is committed to the course of the remediation for this fuel.
Can you guesstimate what year?
I cannot. I would say it's going to take, I would be surprised if it takes less than 20 years.
Hi everyone, my name is Jolene Carico. I am also a member of Citizen Action New Mexico, one of many other things that I do within the community. And I wanted to really kind of simply state what is going on here. So clean water is a necessity to have in order to support a healthy environment. We as human beings need clean water to survive. That is a fact. That seems simple enough, right? Well, obviously, as we have seen by the lack of concern and cleanup of the 24 million gallons of jet fuel spilled above our water supply, that some don't quite grasp this. We live in a desert. What will we do when we lose 60% of our water supply from contamination? We need to save our water supply and save our lives. Why is that we come here over and over again and yet nothing gets accomplished? Why do we come here and listen to the same nonsensical and fallacious babble that is provided by Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico Environmental Department, and the Water Authority? Where is the cleanup? That's what we want to know. What is going on? Why hasn't the extent of the contamination been characterized? Where are the effective monitoring wells? Why has New Mexico Environmental Department failed to enforce this? That's what I want to know. Why? Where is the progress or planning to clean this up? We want to see this. Our local and state officials have failed us. They have failed all of you in this room. Where is Mayor Berry and Governor Martinez? Why are they not concerned about our water and the health and well-being of Albuquerque citizens? Isn't this why we elect them? Sure, we have Citizen Advisory Board here tonight. I don't know who you are. I've never met any of you. And as far as I know, that you have all been hand-selected by Kirtland Air Force Base. And the advisory board has remained completely unresponsive to citizens' concerns, other than entertaining you here tonight with fancy words and PowerPoint presentations and empty promises. We need an independent investigation and an independent citizen advisory board, House Joint Memorial 13, if I remind any of you. The EPA banned the commercial and industrial use of ethylene dibromide, or EDB, more than 40 years ago. And do you know why? Because it's lethal, it's toxic, it killed people. People died from exposure to this chemical. When given orally, tumors develop in the stomach and lungs. Inhalation results in tumors in the nasal cavity and circulatory system. The EPA states that there are no safe levels of human exposure to EDB. So why has New Mexico Environmental Department and EPA allowed all of you in this room to be exposed to 5 times that amount? It's because they know we're being exposed to this chemical as we speak. Sorry, I'm not done. What is going on here is very simple. It's called environmental terrorism and environmental racism. The Kirtland Air Force Base, Department of Defense, New Mexico Environmental Department, Sandia Labs, all guilty of environmental terrorism. You are terrorizing the well-being of our citizens, our water supply, our children's future. I am here tonight not to ask you to clean this up. I'm not asking you. I am telling you, you are going to clean this up, and I will make sure of it.
My name's Sherman McCorkle. I'm a local resident and lifelong New Mexican. I just want to express a little bit of concern about one of the handouts. I do have family members who have lost their lives serving America. Many people here, perhaps your father, your grandfather, brother, or sister served in the armed forces of the United States. But there's a handout here tonight that we're given that says that if you're from Kirtland Air Force Base, that you're dishonest and that you lie to the community. And this handout would have us believe that the individuals who serve defending America, who perhaps come home minus a leg or an arm, or with a traumatic brain injury, if they get assigned to Kirtland, then they become dishonest. This is a sad, sad way to present any kind of an argument. It's certainly disingenuous. It is certainly an embarrassment to those who create the hypocrisy about people who serve America, lose a limb, have a traumatic brain injury, and come back and be accused of this kind of activity. And my point would be Shame, shame on the person that wrote this, that propagates it in our community, and accuses anybody that serves in the uniformed service of the United States, if they get assigned to Kirtland, that they become this lying, dishonest, deceiving presence in our community. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Eric. Bullet number 5. I work as a member of ITRC, the Interstate Technical Regulatory Council. It's the regulators from all 50 states. I work with EPA, DOD, DOE. There's a couple of things that I wanted to support. It's hard in 3 minutes to get all of the issues out here, but I think there's some important red flags that have come up with regard to the accuracy and completeness of the RFI. We need the RFI to continue on with the next phase, which is the corrective measures evaluation. And it's not going to provide that information. This was clearly pointed out by a number of speakers. There's 4,000 feet of missing hydrologic data that is needed in order to be able to do time estimates. Mike pointed out very well that even the models of the Plume and the Plume remediation depends on the pumping. Well, the pumping depends on the hydraulic conductivity between the pumping well and the toe of the Plume, where there are no wells at this point. That's just one red flag. Another red flag that came up is that we're not getting any mass evaluations, or if we are, as in the case of 6 million, which it may be, or in the case of 24 million, which it may be. Those are discrepancies. And I think we need those masses. I've talked about them before. We can't design remediation strategies without them. Nobody can. And I think that it's important to gain faith back into the system. I think all the people here are good and their hearts are in the right place. But the memorial, I think, speaks well for having an independent task force of national level experts, of which there are some wonderful people in this room. But I can tell you nationally, there's a lot of people that have a lot of experience and are very objective, very accurate in their information, and I think could contribute greatly to the process. So I would strongly encourage a careful look at the RFI and its completeness, because we need it as input. And secondarily, I would take to heart the recommendation of the state legislature. I think they spoke very wisely in suggesting that we need a task force, an independent task force of experts to look at the whole process and give advice and give comments and reinstate the faith that we need that the process is going well. RCRA is a good process, but it's an old set of laws, and there's a lot of new information, and the new information is not being put into the current RFI in terms of mass balances, mass loadings, mass concentrations. And we have 2 RFIs, and they have to be married. The VADOS needs to be married to the groundwater RFI because there's an interface there. That's problematic. This is a complex site, and it needs, and Albuquerque deserves national talent and input to look at this and to build our confidence in the system. And I think the state legislature said that extremely well and put it in a memorial, and I would encourage you to look at it, and I would encourage our congressional members to follow that guidance.
Hi, I'm Jill Frawley. I've been in RA for 40 years. I'm very concerned about the health effects of what these people are talking about. I want to ask one question. I want to ask it in this audience. How many people believe what these people have just told us? How many people do not believe what these people have just told us?
Hi, my name is Beverly Doris. I have a couple of statements and also a question. First of all, I want to reiterate what various people have said here. There's really, as always at these meetings, there's really been some misleading information. And
I would argue, erroneous information put out based on what I know, and I've done a lot of research into this. For instance, on EDB, this EDB does not actually degrade. That's in the EPA draft report that just came out and lots of other sources. Also, the question about the modeling, these models that come up and say we have 30 years until it reaches them. Those are bogus because there's not enough information, there's not enough good data, but you can't do good modeling if you don't have adequate data, and there's not been adequate data provided. So it's just wrong. I mean, it'd be nice if it were true. I think these statements are put out to sort of placate us, to try to make us feel better about the situation. But if you want you to research on this on your own, you find out that this is really not accurate information. I would also agree that we need an independent task force. We need people from outside the state that have more experience. This is a massive spill. This is the largest toxic spill ever to threaten a municipal water supply in the history of our country. This is huge. I think we need all the help we can get to try to adequately conceptualize it and clean it up. But anyway, those are my statements. I do have a question for you. What percentage of the contamination is currently in the ground as compared to in the water?
I assume that Bay zone versus groundwater. Mike, can you answer that?
About 5.2 million.
About 5.2 million in the groundwater and about the balance. I believe there's 6 million gallons was spilled, about 5.2 in the groundwater, with the balance being in the soil.
Colonel, evening. I'm Bob Anderson. I just had a couple things to say. It's 3 minutes is really impossible to try to do all this. But I was in the Air Force too. I would spend time in Kirtland out here, and I got out. I had one of the top secret clearances, and I felt that it was just a part of a process of covering up and lying to the people, especially this whole thing of the nuclear weapons depot out here, which the base still will not admit exists as a danger or problem here to the city. You guys will not talk about it. Mr. McCorkle here, who's in the booster committee, he's not telling you the whole truth about it either. I hold this sign because I do think I've got common sense, and I can see that the air over Albuquerque is dirty and polluted. I don't care what the EPA standards are saying and how they've been diluted. It is bad here, and you're going to put more into the air with these soil vapor extractors, which you only say have removed 600,000 gallons, equivalent of something like a 24 million problem. You know, there's a lot of inconsistencies in your statements. If the benzene and the vapors coming off of this plume in this soil are so bad, we should get people off of Bullhead Park. It's not safe for people to be out there in sports teams and games. That's right where this whole plume is flowing into the area. And if there's that much there, they can be pulled off these extractors. It's dangerous for human health. And I think this is like, Ms. Burris is saying, like a Love Canal situation that you guys are trying to play down. And we are really concerned about it because we got to live here. We're not going to be leaving within 2 years when our term is up here and everything. So I'm really concerned. You say this is going to take a long term. And you're going to be gone in 2 years probably. But in the Air Force report to the Congress 3 years ago, it said that the Air Force is going to seek a remedy that requires no or minimal long-term cost. This is humongous. This is going to cost a fortune to clean up. You have no budget for it. We can't look at it. No long-term estimation of that. You know, I think that we the people should take over this base and start selling it off to raise money to do the cleanup ourselves, because we're not going to get it from the Air Force.
My name is Joel Dagos. I'm a member of the Answer Coalition. I was up late trying to create these signs. So, you know, first things first, and I agree with Bob, and I disagree with that gentleman over there. I don't know who he is. But, you know, he doesn't speak for everybody who was a veteran. He doesn't speak for everybody who's in uniform, currently in uniform. There's plenty of, you know, veterans and active duty service members who are against war, who are against imperialism. Just because we don't hear it out loud doesn't mean anything. And I agree with Bob. Maybe we should start selling that base piece by piece. And if you're aggressively, attempting to solve this problem as aggressively as you say so, I hope it's as aggressively as, all of these wars that are being played out across the world, which has been costing us billions of dollars and contaminating other places with depleted uranium. Doesn't seem like they have any care in the world for human life whatsoever. I mean, you guys run around creating, a system that is literally designed to kill human beings. I mean, that's exactly what the military is. I mean, the very definition of it is an institution designed to kill other human beings in the interests of nationalism. So let's not get it twisted now and pretend that somehow this system, exists for the benefit of humanity, when we know very well by its very definition it doesn't. And we don't pretend to think that they're going to do anything about this problem unless we raise some hell about it. And the only reason why they've done anything up until this point at all is because we've raised some hell about it. And I hope that everybody gets out in the streets and raises some hell out of it. That way we can sell that Air Force Base parcel by parcel. They say it gives so much money to the economy here. Why are we always last in every single statistic, as the woman just mentioned? Why are we always last when it comes to education? Why are we last when it comes to poverty? Why are we last when it comes to nutrition? Why are we last when it comes to healthcare? Why are we last when it comes to teen pregnancy rates? How much is this military-industrial complex actually providing to the people here? Why don't we dedicate all of those, very talented individuals? Because those people in uniform, they're trained to do a lot of good things. But unfortunately, it's not being applied. Now, I think that if we redirected their energies towards maybe solving this disaster instead of creating ones all over the world, we can get this finished real damn quickly. Instead of designing, $2 million missiles to go and kill children, why don't we design something to clean up the mess that you made in our backyard? That's something that we need to have happen. We need to have it happen right now. And we're talking about now, not later. And I don't care about your goddamn patriotic rhetoric. I don't give a damn about it. I don't care because that's what I have to say. You're not going to shut me up, and that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Your comments are appreciated. We don't need the language. Thank you.
Dan is an acceptable use of language.
Yes, it is.
That's right.
Right, Joe.
Become part of the community. Maybe you didn't know how we talk around here. But the Air Force is shoveling people in and out so you don't become part of the community and so you won't care and learn to love us, you know? Oh, this is the citizens' meeting, not the Air Force's meeting.
And other citizens deserve the opportunity to speak. So
are you going to throw us out?
Yeah. Of course they're not.
My name is Plume. I was in the Air Force in the 1980s, and when I see on the flyers that the Air Force discovered in 1999 the leakage, I have trouble with that because back in the 1980s I used to run in Bullhead Park, and there's one section of the fence between the park and the base that I could smell something like paint there. And it wasn't until 2011 that I discovered there was a fuel spill there. And I always thought there was something wrong. And I asked a friend of mine who is a chemist in the NMED, was I smelling the leakage? And he says, yeah, you were smelling the leakage. So if I could discover, if I was already suspicious of something back in 1987, I'm questioning how the Air Force, who had people buy the pipelines, the fuel storage tanks, the pumping areas, didn't know about it. Because if I could smell it, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 yards north of the spillage, maybe further, I don't know exactly where it is, I just don't buy that. And I see a pattern, and I wrote some of my thoughts down because I don't want to ramble. And I want to say, some Air Force people can lie. Air Force people are people too. We lie, we can lie. We can be good people too. We can be honorable, we can lie. I was in the Air Force. So as a veteran, I'm going to say, people in uniform aren't automatically saints. I haven't been to a fuel spill meeting in 3 years, but it is very apparent that the Air Force continues to drag its feet into making a serious financial effort in protecting the citizens of Albuquerque. I'm very disappointed in our federal representatives as well as our state and local governments for not demanding a criminal investigation of who knew what, when, what was done. I served in the Air Force 1982-89, and I was stationed at Kirtland. I remember how the nebulous term, the mission, was the #1 priority. Meeting the mission at all costs is now threatening Albuquerque with the loss of some of its most finest water wells. I just learned today that 42 domestic air bases are EPA Superfund sites. There are also 53 Navy and 45 Army facilities that are EPA Superfund sites. 3 more sentences, if I may. Okay. Our military commanders hide behind the flag. Instead of taking responsibility for this criminal negligence. To the communities who are dealing with being near military Superfund sites, our military has become a more immediate threat than the foreign enemies that our military is tasked to defend us.
My name is Carol Benson. I'm on the Aquifer Working Group. And I want to know, is NMED here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is Thomas Blaine here? Okay. Well, I understand you're an expert on health within NMED.
No, ma'am, that's not accurate. I'm a registered professional engineer and have been in engineering for a little over 30 years.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, what was your previous experience in large contamination sites similar to ours before you came here?
My experience with large contamination sites, I don't have any experience in large contamination sites. I do have a tremendous amount of experience in project management, though. And this project is like any other engineering project that has to be methodically analyzed, and a remediation plan needs to be put in place. Since I have been assigned to this project, we have made tremendous progress in getting the remediation portion on track. We have identified the soil vapor system that is being expanded, or that has been expanded now, but then there will be more to that. We have identified that the LMAPL, or the free product that's on the water table, is the next task that has to be addressed. And that task, the Air Force has been given a deadline to the end of June to have a remediation in place that will treat that LMAPL. If that deadline is missed, there will be consequences levied against the Air Force from the New Mexico Environment Department.
I forgot to say, I've been to some of these past meetings also, and I just wanted to second another speaker, a scientist over there on, when are we going to get some international scientists here, have a real think tank here on this problem instead of just local people and Air Force people. And let's get the best international experts we can. This is the biggest problem we've ever had.
Juan Reynosa Swap. You have to look at the South Valley Superfund site to see what's already happened here in Albuquerque that's similar to this. GE, there was a Superfund site that polluted groundwater. They shut down wells, they shut down acequias. They started cleaning that up in '82 and they're still cleaning it up right now. So that's over 30 years that that's happening. So when we talk about 30+ year projections, you know, it's probably at least 30 years. And so, you know, if I was a Ridgecrest person, I'd be concerned myself. And so in regards to that, you know, I just think that expediting with this process is clearly important. You know, I've been to so many of these types of meetings, and yes, it does seem like people are dragging their feet. People want immediate action. Same type of immediate action that y'all Environment Department put on the website with the leakage and stopping that permit for them giving more high-level waste. We need that type of immediate action with this. It threatens a large population and a lot of people's lives are at risk. You look at people in the San Jose area, there's cancer clusters, there's a lot of issues. People always ask questions about what were the results of my health as with regards to that water contamination. There's never any answers. So I would recommend you all starting to do some health impact assessments around these areas so you can see what's going on, and as you can track it and see, that'll help you track the plumes in areas that people are impacted. I also will echo the sentiments of Mr. McCoy here that those wells do need to be in place. If you are identifying a plume and see where it's going, then obviously you should be looking at where that is going in order to get a better idea of where you need to start remediating things. Lastly, in regards to the air stripping, I just would want to recommend that like at least the emissions that you all are looking at include VOCs. Most of the time when they do air monitoring, it's only the very minimal Clean Air Act that they put under there. We're talking about VOCs getting pulled out of the groundwater and being stripped into the air. So I would definitely recommend at least benzene, toluene, those types of things which can't go into the air be monitored under that.
Sally Mears. I have a question for the Colonel. How long have you been on this project?
I arrived in the summer of 2012.
Okay, so your term is almost over.
That's correct.
And then what? This is the frustration I think we have. It's just a cycle of new people coming. And you might be very well intentioned, but I think we need somebody in the long term and not just picking up every 2 years.
I understand your point. It's a fair one. Please understand that I'm not the one that's out doing the work, making it. There's a whole team, a whole host of people that don't turn over. And to your point, there is some concern along those lines. So there has been some dialogue with this, at the various highest levels of the Air Force with regard to the oversight and the management of this project from the Air Force side to make sure that we do that in a manner that is most effective and most efficient. But I did want to make sure that I said once again, this remediation is an environmental issue. Inside the Air Force, environmental issues fall inside our civil engineering outfit. Our base civil engineer has been on this installation for almost 40 years. So there is a long-term individual who is working this issue very hard, and unless he's planning to retire, I'm not aware of it. He will still be here when I depart, and the next commander will come in. And as I mentioned, so there is turnover in the military, but we also we complement that with those folks that don't turn over, and we maintain that longevity and that continuity there. And there is turnover in lots of different areas. You know, inside the Water Utility Authority, New Mexico Environment, there's turnover in government, in all kinds of regulatory areas as well. So turnover is not unique just to the Air Force.
Hi, my name is Oscar, and I'm with the Answer Coalition. I'm going to bring up some points that they don't make sense to me. How can you guys say that the EDP plume is going to hit the water table or water sources in 30 years and you guys can't completely identify exactly where it's at? That's something that doesn't make sense to me. It also doesn't make sense to me how we had a fuel spill for 46 years, but with no regulations? How can this happen for so long with no one knowing what's going on? And all of a sudden we're trying to fix a problem, and there's rules and there's regulations to what we're trying to fix. How come there was no regulations and rules for checking if there's any fuel spill in 46 years? That doesn't make sense to me. And adding on to a comment over there, someone said, why don't we get more resources? Why can't we accelerate this process? Why can't we divert more international attention to these problems? Why can't we get more scientists? Why can't we get more resources? Why can't we completely address this problem as for something of more importance? How come when we developed a nuclear weapon here in New Mexico, we had so much resources, we had so many people working on that one project, and we did it so damn fast? Now, why can't we solve something that's for the benefit of the community instead of killing innocent civilians halfway across the planet?
Answer it.
Let's see if I remember all three of your questions. The first one was about the EDB. So we do have groundwater monitoring wells that we can detect EDB, and so we do know that it's there. And between where we know the EDB plume is and the production wells, we have other monitoring wells that where we do not detect any EDB. So we know where it is and we know where it isn't. And we have those wells in between where we know the EDB is from our detection and where the production wells are. We have wells that are non-detected. Second question had to do with regulations with regard to the cleanup, the remediation, and associated with the fuel spill. There are lots of rules associated with everything associated with fuel. Those rules have changed over time. I can't speak to what all the rules were with regard to having a fuel facility and a situation where you could have a leak that went on undetected for that long. That clearly is not acceptable, but that's the situation that we have. We have the $15 million new fuel facility that we've put in place. We can monitor fuel down to the very small tenths of a gallon. We can account for changes in humidity and how much fuel is in the system. So we have a very rigorous system. All plumbing for that system is above ground, so that we do not have another situation that's like this. In places where it has to go underground, go underneath the road, it's in a specially designed channel with monitors in order to be able to detect if there is any fuel that leaks there. So, and then we're just as frustrated. We want to go out and shove a hole in the ground and do, there are rules, there are requirements, there are regulations. In order to drill a hole, in order to put a well in, there are permits that need to be achieved. There are rules and requirements and regulations, all of which need to be followed. And there are a lot of rules. They can be frustrating as you try to work through them. And that goes back to the point earlier about let's get out there and get it done. But we've got to do it within the bounds that are established by the state and our regulator. And then, as far I can't speak to why we can't get an international think tank here in Albuquerque to address this. We do have, we are working on the problem. We believe that we're making good progress, and we know that there is a lot of work still ahead of us, and we are committed to fixing this problem.
My name is Valerie Smith. I'm a member of the Fair Heights Neighborhood Association, and I work in Lapeer, planted for many years. My early training was as a biologist, and I'm aware of many projects in the past where there was delay, there was misinformation, there was denial. I don't know how convincible I am, but I would just ask you if you could be as specific as possible. What would you say to convince me that there's transparency, oversight, and accountability?
The transparency, every document that we produce, that we submit, is publicly available. Every single document. We have set it up on multiple websites in order for folks to see those documents. And again, everything that we do is done through the approval of a regulator, which is the New Mexico Environment Department. So we don't take any action. Everything that we do is done with their approval, and they are your representative with regard to this process. They are the ones that are overseeing what we do. They are the ones that direct what we do. They are the ones that tell us, no, you can't do that, or you're going to need a permit for this, or we don't think that that's going to help. It may make things worse. So all of those things, as we work through the proposals and ideas and corrective measures and the interim measures that are in place, all of those are done with the oversight of the regulator, which is a state regulator, New Mexico Environment Department. They are, I forget the right word I call it, franchisee, if you will, of EPA. So they have been given the authority from the EPA to oversee this cleanup action. And all things that we do are done and blessed by the New Mexico Environment Department. So we do everything within that framework. We do it within accordance to the regulator, which is the state entity, and